I'm going to keep this part short because we have several awardees this evening. I hope you're all enjoying the food and the company and our first sessions that we kicked off today. And thanks everyone for coming here to Washington State. And for those in Washington, thanks for coming to Olympia. Tonight we have the honor and privilege to honor some of the greatest people who are working to build a clean and strong economy here across the country in Washington State on the West Coast, to both address climate change and to do it more equitably for working people. No doubt you had a lot of innovative conversations today in the breakout sessions. I thought this morning went great. We got to hear a lot from different leaders across the environmental movement and from the labor movement. I was really energized by the discussions today. And we know we need to do a lot more collaboratively together. People at the local, state, and regional level are showing that great things can be accomplished when we work together. But we also have to have a space where we have some difficult conversations. And we hope by bringing everyone here for this sort of summit that the conversations continue long beyond the summit and you're building new relationships moving forward. Tonight we are here to honor organizations and individuals who are making a difference in the fight against climate and the fight for clean and a fair economy for us all. To start off our awards, I'm pleased to welcome State Senator Rebecca Saldana, who represents the people of Washington's 37th District in Seattle. Please welcome Senator Saldana. Thank you.
Good evening. So it's so nice to be here with you. I was in a transportation committee meeting all day long. And tonight I'm here and I'm so pleased to present a BlueGreen Championship Award, or Champions Award. You are the champions. To the Alliance for Jobs and Clean Energy. For those of you who don't know, the Alliance is a coalition of individuals and Washington-based organizations committed to fighting to build the state's economy, improve our health of our people, and to fight against climate change. And what is so extraordinary about this coalition is that we have more than 170 organizations that are members, ranging from health professions to businesses, labor unions, environmental organizations, and communities of color. And they are rooted and organized around a set of beliefs that they share in common. The first is that they will adopt standards and policies that reduce carbon emissions and hold big emitters accountable. The second is that they will grow our economy in Washington State with business and labor that incentivizes a clean energy and technology fueled economy. And number three, that they'll invest in communities of color and communities of low income that have been disproportionately impacted by our fossil fueled pollution and economy. And they are building and mobilizing thousands of volunteers across our state to push for a more equitable, healthy, and prosperous future for everyone. Their policy proposal that they've set forward, will put a price on carbon and use that money to build up renewable energy, provide support to workers impacted by our state's energy shift, promote forestry, ensure that those most impacted by climate change and pollution get their fair share of investments, and provide assistance to low-income families so they have access into this new economy. It is for their work to build a stronger, cleaner future for our state and to build an inclusive movement in doing so that I'm pleased to give the Alliance for Jobs and Clean Energy a 2017 BlueGreen Champion Award on behalf of the BlueGreen Alliance Foundation. Yay. And to receive the award, we have Becky Kelly from the Washington Environmental Council, April Sims from Washington State Labor Council, and Edgar, why am I forgetting? Franks from Community to Community. Thank you so much. They represent our movement, and we're so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Senator Saldana. She is the most appropriate person to present this award because I'm going to tell stories about her in a second. She is a big part of pulling together the Alliance for Jobs and Clean Energy. So we are right in the middle of becoming award-worthy. I think we're award-worthy already. We are, but we got some hard work ahead of us, and we are geared up to do it. And I thought I'd share, on our collective behalf, a couple of lessons that we've learned. Because it's an interesting model. It's unlike anything I think that's happening in the country right now, and we thought, we'll tell you what we're learning, and some of the things ahead. So our foundation is that we have shared goals, and we need each other. And because of that, we're willing to take risks to stay in the room together, and we actually stay in the room together when sometimes we would really rather get out the door. And then, so that's what brought us together and fundamentally keeps us together is we need each other. And the things that we need together are really important to our communities. And then what's happened over the past several years is that we spent a bunch of time together. We talk to each other, we come to understand each other's needs. And then the piece that is a work in progress is that through that process, we have begun to internalize each other's needs and to make them our own. That's a pretty profound thing for a white lady to make the needs of low-income communities my own, and it is a journey, the same for working people, and vice versa, all the directions. But we're doing it, and it's a really profound thing. We created a structure of shared power and shared resources. Few things are more important, I think, if we're going to make a new model like this work. The people who traditionally have called the shots can't keep calling the shots. We got to do it together, and we got to hold each other accountable. And that is, again, for a historically white-led environmental organization, that is some new stuff. And then the glue that holds it together is that we've gotten to know each other. We spend time together. The story about Rebecca is, I remember some rainy, crappy night when we were dealing with some of the conflicts in our community around a previous climate initiative, and we were in your office. It was 8:30. I don't know, your kids were there. You put on a video because you're like, it's 8:30, and we're going to be talking policy for another hour. And, you know, we were there together. And there are so many stories like that, so many rooms, sometimes good snacks, sometimes not very good snacks, sometimes some arguments. But there's a lot of shared history and time together. So we're working on a particular policy, but we are building a movement. And that is what matters. And I think we all feel like this model, I know I do, it's what keeps me going when sometimes I'd rather leave the room. This model is an antidote to, it is a repudiation of the forces in this country that are working so hard to divide us, to divide white people and people of color, to divide union members and environmentalists, to divide people who live in the city and people who live in the country, people who drive Leafs and people who drive pickups. I mean, how many things are there like this that are pulling our country apart right now? And Jeff Johnson, who I wish was here with us right now, but April is ably representing, he said this morning that sometimes we don't notice that the same folks are pushing right to work and trying to keep us addicted to fossil fuels. It's the same guy. It's the Koch brothers. It's literally the same guys. And I love the expression, if they can get you asking the wrong questions, it doesn't matter what the answers are. So this alliance is making sure that we are asking the right questions and we are answering them together. So on behalf of the hundreds of steering committee members, supporter organizations, climate justice stewards, volunteers, people who've come out to a meeting, people who've marched at a march and held the banner. We are really pleased to accept this award. These are the legs of the stool: environment, communities of color, and labor working together. So I would like to say, if you've been part of the Alliance in any way, if you could just maybe kind of raise your hand, wave your hand. A shout out to you. This is for all of us. And thank you so much to the BlueGreen Alliance.
Everyone, please welcome Jana Gastelum, Program Director, Climate, Oregon Environmental Council.
Good evening. I have to say this is the first time I've been introduced by a voice in the sky, and it's kind of amazing. Good evening. Before I begin, I just want to say a quick thank you to the organizers of this conference, and particularly all the staff who do all the work behind the scenes. Also to the staff who are bringing food and making this a really amazing conference. And I'd say that this conference is sort of unlike most other conferences that I've been to, where you sit in sessions and you sort of nod your head, and then that's about what you get out of it. And what I'm observing is that in these sessions, there are actually real conversations that are happening, and there's real tensions that are being surfaced, and there's real work being done. And I think that's really remarkable. And I want to say a commitment, from my own personal standpoint, but I think from what Oregon is doing as well, is that we're committed at staying at the table together and how critically important that is. And part of that is really creating these alliances and giving them new resources and a new kind of breath of life. And I'm so proud tonight to be able to honor someone from Oregon who's really helping make that alliance happen. So here in Oregon, we're lucky to have good friends in the labor movement who understand that tackling climate change will both protect our health and the environment, but also provide an economic opportunity for workers. And tonight, I'm pleased to honor the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 48, for all the wonderful work they've done over the years to build both the infrastructure we need to address climate change and also strong alliances with environmental and community partners. Workers from IBEW, Local 48, have been at the forefront of the clean energy revolution in Oregon. They install solar panels, electric vehicle charging stations, and so much other vital infrastructure that we need to bring clean energy to people. They've led the way among the building trades in our state. On their own building in 2009, they installed a solar system that will pay itself off in 13 years, which is now many fewer years since 2009, but it's also avoiding over 1,700 tons of carbon dioxide every year. And they've installed electric vehicle charging stations, and then they've used their facility as a showcase to teach others about clean energy and invited people into that space. I was at the ribbon cutting, and even though it was a rainy day, it was tangible, the excitement of the Oregon community to have a space where you can look and touch and feel and talk to workers who are doing this work. IBEW Local 48 has also been one of the driving forces in the creation of the Oregon BlueGreen Alliance. We're proud to work side by side with them to bring about a clean economy that is fair and just. Fairness and justice are critical pieces of the transition ahead, and IBEW 48 has also used their resources to host community dialogues and forums on community benefit agreements and addressing inclusion for women and people of color, and I really appreciate and admire that work. So for their work to advance solar energy and electric cars and their leadership on the Oregon BlueGreen Alliance, I'm proud to give this 2017 BlueGreen Champion Award to IBEW Local 48 on behalf of the BlueGreen Alliance Foundation. Garey Young, business manager of IBEW Local 48, is here to accept the award. Please join me in.
Thank you. Thank you very much to BlueGreen Alliance and everybody here today. Really greatly appreciate this, and moreover, honored to accept this award on behalf of the IBW Local 48. There are many others behind the scenes besides myself working in this direction, and as we all know, this is some of the most important work that's really going on in the world that many haven't identified with, and it's our job to do that. As we know, change is not easy for many or most. You know, I find that sometimes it's fun and challenging, and other times, you know, I want to resist it just as much as anybody else. But this, like I said, is probably the most dangerous issue facing our world, and I would ask and commit to you that we push forward with this vision to communicate with all communities within our area, our region, and our nation to get this message out, to do what it takes, to stay at the table and work through whatever we have to. And it's going to be hard work, let's be honest, but I'm confident that if we all hang together, we're going to get that done. Again, thank you very much, and I appreciate all your attention here.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Zoe Littman, Director, Vehicles and Advanced Transportation Program, BlueGreen Alliance.
Throughout this conference, and certainly for months and years before this, we've all been talking about the necessity of investing in a new generation of infrastructure and how we make sure that those investments support building a clean and fair economy. And at the same time, we've also heard a lot about how critical it is that when we move to the next generation of clean technology, whether that's in vehicles, in energy, or in infrastructure, that we ensure that these new industries deliver good family-supporting jobs and union jobs and deliver them equitably to all communities. The recipient of this next award, Jobs to Move America, has systematically brought together organized labor and community organizations to make these kinds of gains a reality. JMA and its partners have engaged companies at a local, state, and federal level, federal agencies across the country. In New York, Chicago, and in LA, they've engaged Amtrak to win enforceable agreements that help ensure that billions of dollars in investment in the next generation of transit equipment not only translates into domestic manufacturing and jobs, but into jobs that pay good wages and benefits and deliver not just access, but concrete pathways into employment for local workers and communities, particularly for historically excluded populations. For example, in late July of this year, the board of the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transit Authority awarded a multi-million-dollar contract for 60 40-foot all-electric buses to BYD, an EV manufacturer, electric vehicle manufacturer, growing locally and globally. Thanks to several years of work by JMA and its labor and community partners to engage the company, the transit agency, community, and workers, that purchase came with an agreement by the company to union neutrality and a community benefit agreement that will increase good jobs in electric bus manufacturing for workers from local communities at the company's facility in Southern California. The 700 workers there, soon to be 1,000 workers at the BYD factory, voted to join the Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers Union, SMART, Local 105. And under the agreement, BYD will commit to hiring 40% of its workers from populations facing significant barriers to employment, including veterans, the reentry population, people of color, and women. These new workers will receive technical training from SMART, join a pre-apprenticeship program, and there will be other innovative programs to identify and overcome transportation and other barriers for workers. For their work, the BlueGreen Alliance Foundation is proud to give a 2017 BlueGreen Champion Award to Jobs to Move America. Here to accept this award are Erica T. Patterson, National Policy Director of JMA, Elizabeth Bunn, the very recently retired Organizing Director of the AFL-CIO, as well as key staff from JMA who have been critical to these successes, Abhilasha Bola and Hector Hueso.
Thank you so much, Zoe, for the warm introduction. I can't tell you enough how much of a pleasure it's been to work with you for the last 4 years on Jobs to Move America's efforts at the national level and at the local level. First, I also have to start by saying we really couldn't have done any of this work without our talented and dedicated staff, Abhilasha Bola and Hector Hueso, who are really leading the community relationship building and the strategy for identifying new opportunities in our work. And so we really couldn't have done it without them. So please give them a round of applause. And on behalf of Jobs to Move America, we are so honored to receive this award and to share this space with you all. We've met so many passionate and brilliant activists today that are really working hard to advance a clean and more equitable economy. You know, this is a time when the federal government is stripping away critical worker and environmental protections, attacking immigrant communities and communities of color. And so it's more important than ever that the labor movement, the environmental movement come together to resist this destruction to our communities. And I can't emphasize enough that we've seen our campaigns and coalitions are strongest when we center them around issues of racial, environmental, and economic justice. And if any one of these pieces is missing, our work really cannot be transformational. And so with that, I really want to thank all of our partners who have made our campaign successful. A big shout out to one of our co-founders, Elizabeth Bunn, former organizing director at the AFL-CIO. The BlueGreen Alliance, especially Zoe, Ross, and JB, who we get to work with the most closely. Of course, our friends at the Sierra Club, the Union of Concerned Scientists, the Black Worker Center. And then I cannot forget all of our wonderful labor partners, including IBEW, SMART, CWA, IAM, TWU, and the United Steelworkers. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And now I'm going to share the stage with Elizabeth Bunn, who helped found our organization. So,
thanks. So, thank all of you so much, and it's a privilege for me to accept this award with JMA and on behalf of the AFL-CIO. You know, a big shout out to BlueGreen. The AFL's partnership with the BlueGreen Alliance is extremely deep. And important, and it means the world to the working men and women who comprise our great movement. On a personal note, as Erica mentioned, I've been involved with Jobs to Move America really from the beginning, before it even was called Jobs to Move America. You can imagine there were a number of meetings that discussed what we should call ourselves. But from the beginning, you know, we had really one theory, and that theory is that we can forge a coalition of the following, when there are, especially when there are public tax dollars being spent to buy stuff. And that coalition is working people. It's the communities that buy the products that are used where they live and work. And it's even the companies who are providing products for our communities. And we believed that we could forge an alliance that was premised on a few very basic principles. Number one, companies building products for the American consumer paid for by American tax dollars, should be built in America. 2, the workers building those products should have a real chance to decide for themselves whether or not to become part of a union. 3, the community members should have access to the jobs building those products. And finally, that the products should help the community in a long-term way by being sustainable and by helping our world that is in our environment, which is in such great need of repair. So as Zoe ably pointed out, we've made some progress. We've created new jobs in a number of different cities. In each of these places where new jobs have been created, they've either been at a union facility or there's been a community benefits agreement, which includes neutrality and majority sign-up provisions, as well as access to the jobs from the community. But we have a long way to go. BlueGreen has been a partner from day one, and part of their partnership is to remind us to think big and bold, that a factory here and a factory there is not enough. We've got to think really long-term and including looking at the supply chain of these companies that manufacture these products. But by the same token, like I said, we've made real progress, and there is a proof of concept. And again, our principles are pretty basic. We can rebuild manufacturing in this country, we can create new jobs, and we can ensure that those jobs sustain families. We can ensure that the communities where the jobs are created have access to those jobs, and we can help sustain the planet, which, as I said, is in such desperate need of repair. So just in closing, I can't say it any better than Cesar Chavez or Barack Obama. Si se puede, and yes, we can. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to David Campbell and Mike Smith, United Steelworkers.
Good evening. In September of 2016, the United Steelworkers, along with the Sierra Club, stood in front of the Cal OSHA Standards Board to fight for safety regulations that hadn't been updated in decades. This was a once-in-a-generation opportunity to overpower the most powerful industry in the world, the oil industry, in taking control of our safety as workers. It was a 4-year process. It started, or 5-year process. We've had many incidents up and down the state of California, as you are well aware of here in the state of Washington with the Anacortes refineries. Yes. But August of 2012, Chevron Richmond refinery had an explosion that sent 15,000 community members seeking medical attention, as well as endangering the lives of 19 of our USW brothers and sisters who were in a vapor cloud that ignited. That started a task force that was brought upon by Governor Jerry Brown with the help of the BlueGreen Alliance, the Sierra Club, and many community groups, local community groups, as well as the building trades inside the state of California. We were able to fight for 4.5 years on a regulation that we thought was going to make our refineries not only safer for the workers, but for also the communities that surrounded them. Up until the last 5 months, we were good. Industry had fought back, and when we ended up seeing the final regulation, not the final, a final draft, the state had obviously been influenced by industry very well, and it caused us to kind of rally the troops, and that's when Sierra Club and the members in California really stepped up. They sent 2,000 letters to the Standards Board prior to the meeting. It was something the Standards Board chairman said they had never seen on a regulation. It was It happened to be, we had trained a lot of our safety leaders up and down the state of California to come and speak at that meeting. For some reason, the final meeting was on a day that we had our health and safety conference back in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where all of our safety leaders were, so they were unable to attend. But with the likes of Josh Sonnenfeld from Sierra Club San Francisco, and I believe, I don't want to, is it Lena Moffitt? I think that was it, yes? All right, yes. Our voice was strong, and it ended up being, we had some late-minute obstacles, last minute, but it ended up being a unanimous vote. Industry is still fighting, but we, as of October 1st, we're going to have what we think is a leading, the best safety regulation there is in the United States, and we're hoping, yes. And we're hoping that trend comes up to the Northwest. I know there's a lot of work that's happening with the Steelworkers up here and the alliances up here to be able to take that and hopefully make it stronger, and we can do the same in California. But I'll let you finish.
So I pulled seniority on Mike. On behalf of the steelworkers and all of the oil workers in California and the fence line communities, we want to present the award to Luis Emasquia from Sierra Club.
Thank you, everyone. Well, first of all, I want to thank the BlueGreen Alliance for executing this well-made event. I've had a lot of really great conversations with some of you, and I'm looking forward to continuing working with all of you. I also want to take a moment to call out all my Sierra Club folks. I think that the work that volunteers and staff have done to this day is what made the Sierra Club be in this position today. So just want to take a moment for them to join me up here. Don't be camera shy. Yeah. We've definitely packed the room tonight. And so, yeah, it's a lot of us. And so, you know, the work that all of us staff volunteers do is really crucial to, you know, really work with all of you as well on behalf of the Sierra Club to get where we are today. And ultimately, this is also not just the work that we all do, but all the work that we do with all of you, and the true partnerships that we form with the variety of organizations within the BlueGreen Alliance. So true partnerships and committing to a just and vibrant future together is really about building long-term and transformative relationships. For example, when our brothers and sisters at the United Steelworkers called on us to work with them on the refinery safety rules, it was really a no-brainer. And when the Sierra Club was pushing for some legislation that is currently pending at the governor's desk around AB 262, also known as the Buy Clean California Act, that was also a no-brainer for us. And as some of you might not know, the Buy Clean California Act will be first in the nation to require materials like steel or those manufacturers that come up with these materials to have a greenhouse gas emission report. So when the state is asking for bids for you know, either asphalt, steel, the companies in California that are adhering to our strongest environmental standards do have a shot at getting that bid, and they're not disadvantaged because there's manufacturers in China that, you know, have more greenhouse gas intensive materials, but they're cheaper. So the work that we can do together is really strong, as you've seen with the work that we've done with the United Steelworkers and the bill that is currently at the governor's desk. It really speaks volume to what we can do when we're together. And I'm hoping that we will continue working together because, as a lot of people have mentioned in the past and in this event, that when we're together, it's harder for our enemies or maybe frenemies to conquer us if we're advocating for the same thing. So with that said, in closing, I want to say that we need to be moving forward together, and we've already made 2 things that are first in the nation, and we're hoping to continue doing that amazing work together. So thank you. Do you want a picture? Yes. Nope. We're all too large.
He got one.
Oh, he wants another. He wants to take one.
Okay.
Oh.
That's good.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome JB Tango, West Coast Director, BlueGreen Alliance, and Stephanie Selk, Washington State Policy Coordinator, BlueGreen Alliance.
Good evening. Tonight I'm honored to talk about the Dina Biscotti Community Service Award. Dina was a team member of mine on the California team at the BlueGreen Alliance. She had an infectious personality and was a joy to be with and work with. She was a whirlwind of energy and a warrior for what is right. And she embodied many of the principles that we've talked about today. But sadly, Dina left us far, far too soon. While with BGA, Dina truly fought for solutions that look to better the lives of workers and build cleaner communities. And today, California is cleaner and safer because of a groundbreaking law, another one first in the nation, which requires utilities to fix and find natural gas leaks that threaten our communities. To honor her work and her commitment, we created the Dina Biscotti Community Award. This award recognizes an individual who, like Dina, fights every day to put forward solutions that create good jobs and environmental issues that threaten our neighborhood. And I'm happy that this award continues to keep Dina close to us. To introduce this year's Dina Biscotti Community Service Award, please welcome my colleague, Stephanie Selt.
Thanks, JB. And I am so happy to be able to honor someone that I am so very pleased to work with, Steve Garey. Steve Garey was the president of the United Steelworkers Local 591 up in Anacortes, Washington, a refinery local also struggling for the same sorts of improvements to their regulations that we were just hearing about. So we're working on that here too. Steve is also working on it. He retired, and almost immediately he joined our executive committee, and he has been a really important part of our team ever since. And I just wanted to share that, a couple of things that Steve says on a regular basis that always stick with me. One is that if you ever ask him how he's doing, he always says he's never been better. And he is just the most positive person you will ever meet. He just is has this great attitude towards life. And he also, when you ask him or when you're discussing the work of the BlueGreen Alliance, he very often speaks in terms of a metaphor about walking on a tightrope. And he says that some days the winds are blowing stronger and they're threatening to push you off, but we just have to keep on going and do our best to keep walking that tightrope. And I think that's so true. But it's so inspiring to hear it from Steve, because he's retired. He doesn't have to do this stuff anymore, right? He doesn't have to get up early and go to meetings. He drives down from Anacortes all the time to come to our meetings, and he does, and he doesn't question it. And I think it's just speaks so much to the fact that he believes in what we are doing, and he is willing to put his effort into it. And I am just so gratified and inspired to work with him. So, Steve, thank you so much.
I am humbled. This is an unusual situation for me. I'm not accustomed to, I've never been recognized, actually, for my advocacy ever. And I've been doing it all my life. The question is kind of silly. It was like asking me why I breathe, right? Because you just have to. And I don't know how much time we have. I think we're way over the time that was allotted in the agenda that I saw. I was actually gonna try a few short stories on you a bit, but is it all right? All right. All right, so I've been thinking about this a bit, and it's kind of, in a way, I think about it like this question I've gotten all my life, really, from others about why I do this, why I advocate. And most particularly the last 2.5 years from refinery workers and climate activists and others. I think it's counterintuitive a bit. They think they don't understand why someone who's advocated for fossil fuel workers and their communities for so long, why I would be so adamant about convincing them to take BlueGreen principles seriously and to engage in that work and become part of the solution. So I thought I'd try to answer that question. The simplest way to answer it really is because my union asked me to. That's the honest truth. So I mean, if you like what I do, then you got to like or thank the district director of United Steelworkers District 12, Bob LaVenture. You've got to thank the assistant director at the time, Chris Youngmark. And then another pretty wise guy, Jim Young from the Labor Institute. They asked me to do this, and I think it's a good fit, so I'll try to explain why, I guess with a couple of short stories. The first part of the story is just who I am, what I came with for who knows why. I like to build things. I like to make things. I like to fix things. And I'm inspired by stories like that. One of my favorite stories is how the Brooklyn Bridge was built. Perhaps you know of it. It's a tragic story, in addition to inspiring. Hundreds of workers lost their lives or were permanently disabled building that bridge. They had to build the foundations of the approaches and the towers down through the muck, down to bedrock, and they had to work under pressure to do that. And they didn't understand the bends. They were dying or being disabled because of the bends. And then even once all that sacrifice had been done and these structures were created, it still wasn't a bridge. It wasn't a bridge until this big cable, steel cables were built and spanned that structure to carry the load, right? And none of this had ever been done before. But somebody had to pull that first wire. And then the second, pulling and wrapping and pulling and wrapping. And now that thing has stood there carrying the load for 150 years, right? And they said it couldn't be done. I think we're kind of doing stuff like that together, perhaps. And I find that inspiring. So that's a bit of kind of what I come with. The second story is about lessons learned along the way, things that inform me. I grew up in a little tiny logging towns. My dad was a logger. Here in Western Washington, we moved all the time. Never lived in a town with more than 1,500 people in it. And then everything changed. Just as I was entering high school in 1966, we moved to eastern North Carolina, the Jim Crow South. There's a part of the story that takes too long to tell, but suffice it to say, the brutality and the exploitation I witnessed there have made me who I am. I'm going to tell a story about some lessons partly learned there, and then along the way, both work lessons and academic lessons. The first one was there in 1967, my first union job in a pulp mill. And a couple of these old paper makers made sure that I was going to understand something that they knew to be true. They taught me that the wages and benefits I enjoyed had been provided by those who came before me, who had sacrificed so that people like I and they could have a better life. And they taught me that my responsibility was now to recognize that I was part of a continuum of people who sacrificed, not just for themselves, but for those who come after. I enrolled in the University of Washington in Seattle after high school. I studied life sciences. I got a Bachelor of Science degree. My professors made clear to me how fragile life is, how interconnected it all is, and how narrow the atmospheric conditions, the pressures, the temperatures and conditions are that support life, and how essential it is that we recognize that complexity and that fragility and protect it. After that, in work, almost always under union contract, in construction, shipbuilding, industrial manufacturing, and then oil refining, I learned other lessons. In shipbuilding, the shipyards in Seattle were organized on a craft basis, not an industrial basis. That means that each craft had their own organization. There were about 12 unions there. And honestly, they spent more time fighting amongst themselves than they did with the employer, to our detriment. I am a believer in industrial organizations, like the Steelworkers. But I learned a very important lesson there. I learned what I call relative value. Relative value teaches that just because something provides a short-term benefit for a few, that does not mean it provides long-term benefit for many. We taught that just because someone gains a little, a few gain, does not mean it leads to long-term prosperity for the many. And most importantly, we learned that long-term prosperity for the many and the best interest of the many must always outweigh short-term gain for a few. Later in the refineries, as I accepted more responsibility for contract defense and bargaining and organization and all that, I learned another pretty important lesson about problem solving. Fundamentally, I learned that you can't solve a problem if you're part of the problem. And it gets tricky here because we have kind of two minds, human beings do, about problems, right? We have kind of a primitive way of thinking and then a more sophisticated way, and it's a mistake to think in more primitive terms. We have a tendency often to think of a problem as a threat. And right, you can ignore a threat, you can run away, or you can fight it. Those are pretty well documented, but that will almost always be a mistake in the kind of problems, to face the kind of problems we face today, right? I guess if you're staring down a cave bear with a sharp stick, there might be some strategy there, but it doesn't help as much today. It tends to condemn us to becoming or remaining part of the problem. So today we must see a problem as a challenge. And we're facing the greatest challenge of our time, perhaps any time right now, with global warming. We rise to a challenge. To see it as a challenge encourages us, our higher order beings, our intellect, our sense of right and wrong, our willingness to collaborate. All of that comes about when we recognize the challenge. So that's what I do. I know we must sacrifice for those who come after. I know we must put the best interests of the many ahead of the best interests of the few. I know that we must become part of the solution to protect the only place we know that supports life. So thank you. And thanks to all of you as well, because the fact is, we all enable each other. We all enable each other, right? If you like what I do, look in the mirror. You'll see a person who enables me, and let's keep doing that, okay? We're building something that hasn't been done before.